I need you to be checking out when you're sent links for lessons for chamber. Now, we're trying to make sure everything, once it's set, stays the rest of the 2 weeks, that they are recurring meetings. By the way, can somebody just unmute their microphone and tell me what happens if you can't find your Zoom link to your class or meeting? What do you do?
You go to the office.
Office.
Yeah, you come to the office link, right? We got you. We'll put you in a breakout room with the teachers and we'll get it taken care of, right? Thursday night, I want to be our first performance class. I've had 2 students reach out, so I got room. We got room. If you want to play, play. Actually, I've had 1 student and 1 teacher reach out. So I'm hoping that that student's teacher told them they got volunteered for this. There's a little Bach Partita action happening there. Send me an email. I'd love to have you play for your colleagues, your classmates on Thursday night. Sing for your classmates on Thursday night. It is the lack of performing for each other and the social interaction in that regard that I am most that I think we're most missing right now in this format, right? So I just want to make sure that we take care of that. Now, I think that's all I have. So I would like to just turn things over to our guests this evening. I will be putting their website addresses in the chat here after we get going a little bit. I just want to make sure that everybody is here so that we get maximum exposure to that. Richard Harris is the new trombone professor at the University of Denver. He'll be coming to DU in the fall. And you guys are in Santa Fe right now, right? Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yep. So they're in Santa Fe. And, I know Richard through this exact application right now. We've talked on the phone and we've seen each other via Zoom, but he hasn't been here yet. And we've all been locked down, right? So, haven't really got to meet him in person, but I am loving his involvement thus far in Lamont Summer Academy. And with him is his wife, Margaret Dyer Harris. And we've got a cool thing. We're going to get to hear some music, and then we're going to get to hear just how they got where they are. We're going to get to hear those stories about coming up as musicians, making a life as musicians. So I don't know that I need you to unmute. Maybe we can get some snaps in our screens or some claps in our screens, and I'm going to turn things over.
Hey, well, it's great to be here. Thank you so much, Conrad. My name's Richard Harris, and my wife Margaret and I, we've been in New York for many years now, actually, although we are in Santa Fe just hiding from this COVID thing. But we've been in New York and, various other places before that. In the last year, some of the things I've been doing is I played on the Oscar-winning soundtrack for a movie called Joker. And I don't know if you guys are old enough to watch that. Maybe I sound old when I say that myself. But, I won, I was on a Grammy. We were both on a Grammy-winning album with a jazz bass player called Esperanza Spalding. It was very cool. You should check that out. And, of course, I'm coming to DU as well. So that's sort of some of the things I've been up to.
And I am currently the violist of the Broadway show Wicked. As you know, that's not happening right now, so it's another reason that we're here. I'm also assistant principal in the Santa Fe Opera Orchestra. Today would have been our second day of rehearsal, so I'm feeling kind of nostalgic for that. And I also play in a chamber orchestra in New York called the Knights, sort of a Brooklyn-based group, and I run their family concert series. And I also just play chamber music with lots of colleagues, including Alice, who you will see tomorrow night.
Cool.
So, should we play?
Let's play. All right. So this is a duet. It's a Telemann fantasy. Mark Presto, George Philippe Telemann.
So obviously, there's not a huge amount of repertoire for this combination, so we've had to be creative. I think actually we're playing all trombone duets.
Well, this is a keyboard duet.
Right.
This is originally for keyboard.
Right, and arranged for trombone. So
so I don't have to transpose. You have to.
It's okay. All right. Thank you. I think that's our first time playing live on Zoom.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Great.
It's interesting. I don't know if you guys saw that photo of a chamber music group in Milan, I think. Was that La Scala? But they, instead of members, human audience members, they filled all of the seats with these beautiful plants.
I saw that today. It was an Italian opera house somewhere. I can't remember where. It might have been La
People are
Scala.
getting creative.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my turn to
It's
talk.
your turn to talk.
Oh, okay. Well, here I am. Okay, so here I am. I told you what's happening right now, or what would be happening right now. I started playing the viola, which is unusual. Most people start on violin. And I started in my public school, which I'm very proud to say. But also I was used to hearing music at home because my mom plays violin and viola, sort of in an amateur capacity, but she's just done it her whole life. So I used to watch her have her friends over in our living room reading chamber music, Haydn and Mozart, and I think I was just really drawn to that level of communication from a very young age. So I focused on a lot of other things as a young child: soccer, math, sometimes viola. But then I got a little bit more serious through high school, and I ended up going to Interlochen Arts Academy for my last year of high school. And then I went to the San Francisco Conservatory for my undergrad, and then I went to NEC, New England Conservatory in Boston, for my master's and graduate diploma. But when I was thinking about that list, I actually thought that some of my most meaningful and memorable and impactful musical experiences weren't only at school, but were actually at music festivals, especially the Yellow Barn Festival in Vermont and Kneisel Hall Festival in Maine. And that's why this is so special, because this is where you meet people that might be going in different directions or coming from different places, but you establish these connections because you're working so in such a concentrated way together, and you have this time that is such a gift to be able to really focus on what you're doing. So I feel like that's part of my education too. So that's what we're going to talk about until now, right? They're going to play.
Unless you want to say more, that's fine. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of like deciding to study music seriously, I remember a few concerts, maybe when I was a teenager, when there would be a moment I thought, oh, there's nothing better than this. There's nothing better than playing this beautiful music with these people. But I don't think I really felt very, very serious until just about before I went to Interlochen and was around people that were doing the same thing and considering the same thing. I think my high school experience before that was at a public school that was a magnet for computer science. So I had a lot of friends that were just like, this music world was so foreign to them, and it was helpful for me to meet other people outside of Fresno, which I grew up in Fresno, California, who, had a similar passion, who would go to the Barnes and Noble and spend hours looking at CDs, which is what we were doing then. Yeah.
You better explain what a CD is.
I don't think I have to. But yeah, so I think we should play.
Yeah. No, what I want to ask though, is there one moment when you said to yourself, I have to do this for the rest of my life? Is there like one musical experience that you can remember where you go, this is it. I'm so drawn to this that I can't I couldn't do anything else?
Absolutely. I mean, I can think of several, and they're not that long ago. One of them was Richard and I met. We'll talk about that again, but we met at a program in New York City at Carnegie Hall. And we had a concert at Carnegie Hall conducted by Sir Simon Rattle, and Christian Tetzlaff was the soloist.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like the dedication I had with that concert specifically, and learning the part to the Strauss Metamorphosen.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and playing it at Carnegie Hall. And I think, yeah, some of our, I don't know, it's just...
You got to explain that. So Simon Rattle at that point was the conductor of the Berlin Philharmonic, and
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. All right, let's play.
Okay. I like playing better than talking. So this is from another arrangement for two trombones. I shouldn't pronounce it actually. You should pronounce
it. It's Bosmortier.
Bosmortier.
So Bosmortier, French composer, wrote these duets for any tenor instruments actually. I think bassoon, but they were always played by any tenor sort of instrument, two cellos, two trombones, even viola and trombone. Although there aren't any famous recordings yet. So this is a sonata, and it's allegro, adagio, and then a final allegro. So there's three movements, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy.
keep hitting the microphone.
I'm gonna move it up.
That's probably like very. I think we should close the door if it's open.
Okay, I don't
We
know.
have a 17-month-old baby, and I think, and he just went to sleep, so we're trying to do this so he can't hear us.
The hitting of the microphone with your bow is always timed very nicely.
Oh, good.
It sounded like a little bit of a bass drum, just at appropriate places.
Yeah, we just need a tambourine.
Yeah, right? Right. I think, if you don't mind, let's hear Richard's story, and then let's do a quick round of questions.
Sure.
I think, and then we'll move.
Childhood, which is interesting, is that Margaret's mom was, I don't know if she's amateur. I mean, she plays in several regional orchestras, and goes to chamber music courses around the world actually. Whereas my parents sold toilets for a living, and they had sort of no insight into the music business or the music profession, and actually was sort of very apprehensive to encourage me to pursue that, certainly seriously, because of the fear of, wow, how do you make a living as a musician, and what sort of living would that look like? But I was pretty strong-headed as a young man and very determined. I think because of the similar experiences to Margaret that I'd had at festivals and summer camps that I'd been invited to, and that's where I was from a fairly provincial town in England, and I went to a music course and met people from London, who seemed so cool. These kids from the big city, and wow, was that an eye opener for me. And one of the first people I ever met was as a young man called Daniel Harding. Now, if you know anything about the classical music sort of scene right now, that Daniel is, I think he's principal guest conductor of the London Symphony Orchestra. He has his own orchestra in Germany. And you sort of compare his upbringing to mine, because I always lived in this provincial town. My parents were blue collar, which I have no issue with it. It's great. They gave me a great start. But both of Daniel's parents were professors at Oxford University, one of physics and one of chemistry. It's like being professor at Yale or Harvard or something. And I remember going to their house, and at this point, I don't know if you can imagine, I'd never seen a personal computer before, but they had several around the house sort of broken into pieces, and there were piles of books on the stairs, which my mother would never allow happen, because that would be collecting dust or something. But it was just this sort of fantastical, almost bohemian, but certainly a very I don't know what's the eccentric upbringing. And Daniel had this row of records. Ask your parents what those are. Like the length of his bedroom with a record player, and he'd sit in front of them conducting like this when he was 12 years old. And he's gone on to have a very successful career, which is great. But my experiences of playing music, I could think of several points along my path where I was like, I have to do this. There isn't any way that I can't have this in my life. And by sort of trying and dedicating and working hard and taking the opportunities that came along, I was at a level which exposed me, for things like the National Youth Orchestra in England, of which there is one now in the US as well, run out of Carnegie Hall. Some of you may know that. And I got a scholarship to the Royal Academy of Music in London to study for my undergrad. So I think I'd really like to say to any parents out there that, if my son wanted to become a tennis player, I would have no idea how to help him and support him, but I'd try, maybe with the internet these days, it's a little easier to find the right guidance. But, even though I didn't come from any musical background, I was still able to, force my way or find my way, is a better way of saying it, into a professional career that's, fortunately taken me all around the world, to great places and great experiences with great friends in so many different cultures, and it is really rewarding. And going back to the business side of it now, if you go and get a degree in accountancy, they'll say you'll have a job for life, and that kind of security is very appealing, and it's very it's the right thing for some people, but you're going to go to an office and you're going to do accountancy for the next 30 or 40 years of your life. And that's not a bad thing, but that's what you're going to do. And that knowledge and stability is good for some people. But I think as a musician, you're going to grow and evolve. And certainly some of the things that I've ended up doing, I never had any idea I would do when I was, a young student at a music camp. However, some of the things that have come into my professional life have been just as rewarding and even more rewarding than performing on stage at Carnegie Hall with a huge orchestra, for example, which for many years was just all I wanted to do. But there are other things, and we'll talk about them more later, that other ways of being a musician in your community, in your society, which can be just as, if not more rewarding. I think it's an exciting time to be an artist and a musician.
Yeah. It looks like there's some things popping up on the chats. I don't know.
Yeah, there's lots. They're doing a great job with that. Remind me, I want to come back to the statement you just had. It's an exciting time to be an artist and musician. Hopefully, I want to maybe finish up with that tonight. I think that would be a great thing to talk about. So I told them to send me 3 questions, and they sent me way more. So we'll come back to some of these. But the first one we got is, how do you balance the stress of performing with the pure enjoyment and love and passion you have for your art?
Okay, so I when I was around high school age, I had a lot of stress with performing, and it's tough. It's a horrible place to be when you work hard and then you walk out and things don't go right because your body sort of fights you, right? And it's just practicing doing it. And I think something that we're going to talk about are some of the non-traditional performance spaces where we've ended up performing as professional musicians that can really help. If I were you, I would go back to your infant schools or your middle schools and say, hey, can I come and play for your kids? Because kids are so honest. If you go and play to an elementary school set of kids, they're going to let you know immediately if they're bored, right? and it's just a great thing to stand up in front of people. Stand up in front of your boyfriend. Stand up in front of your parents. Stand up in front of anybody, aunts and uncles. Anybody in your life. Stand up in front of them and perform. And just understand that at the end of the day, no one wants you to fail. Everyone wants you to do the best and get back to that love of performing. Because when you start studying, it's real easy to get too caught up in your own head about, I've got to do this right and that right and this right.
Yeah.
When you're trying to master your instrument and you're getting all this information from the wonderful teachers and professors that are surrounding you, I have no doubt, it's real easy to get hung up on that. So you have to perform just as much as you practice in the practice room.
Yeah, that's good.
One of our questions is, what is your biggest motivation for continued growth to get better?
I think you should say that.
Well, I mean, there's a I'm not going to get it right, but there's a Pablo Casal's quote where, he talks about just being a student for his whole life, and I think that's very inspiring. I think, not to reflect on this time too much, but it's been a gift for me to have the kind of time to practice and kind of to revisit, because I think if this sort of thing, I don't know, I feel like it's a gift to be able to hone a craft, no matter what it is. And I think it's important to honor that. If you have the privilege to be able to study something like music, then how amazing to, oops, I just dropped my bow. How amazing to be able to do that, and to really dive deep into something. I'm constantly inspired by my colleagues, especially now that people are posting so many things online, and I think there's a little bit less hesitation to post things, which at first was a little alarming to me. Then I thought, no, this is great. This is we should be sharing this with each other. This is our method of communication right now. So let's go there. That's great.
Yeah, I just see it as a starting the day with my instrument is almost like a mantra for me. I find it almost like meditation. When you warm up on a brass instrument, you warm up and you start with breathing, and you have to be very focused. And you're only doing very simple movements, compared to fiddle players, with a trombone. So it's a very meditative experience. Spending a day with your instrument and improving and honing so that you can tell a story. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. Mastering an instrument isn't a means to an end. Mastering an instrument is so that you can then communicate something. And when you get to the point where you really feel that you can strongly communicate, actually the inspiration to really master the fine arts and have perfect control over as much of the articulation or legato or whatever it is on your instrument, it actually becomes more I'm more desperate now to hone that than maybe I even was when I was young. When I was younger, it's sort of more said to yourself, I've had that musical experience and I can't live without it. Like, I have to have it. And I think if you find those experiences in yourself, you keep dedicated to your instrument, you'll keep having them. If you can remember them from when you're young and you keep dedicated, you'll keep finding them in your progress. And maybe we all know some musicians that perhaps get jobs or they get comfortable, and for whatever reason, they do lose the love for it, and they're just sort of hacking out a job. And it's just one of the saddest things, actually.
I think I also want to say that there will be times when it you can't make that shift or something. There's going to be that, but that's good. That's growth. This is a good moment for this because I'm going to play the last movement, the Gigue, from this the second Bach suite for solo cello. But I wanted to just play the very first part, very opening of the beginning of the whole suite, because it's interesting. We're going from D minor to D minor, but I feel like in this first short statement, I feel like Bach goes the full circle of how he actually lays out the entire suite, and there's something that's a little even more celestial about that, and how these 3.5 bars encompass so much. I'm just gonna play those, and then I'll skip to the last movement, which is the Gigue, a dance. So I see that as a big circle. I'm looking at a ring light, so maybe that's why I'm thinking of a circle.
talk about?
Oh, me. Okay.
Up to ACJW.
Oh boy. Okay. So this is a pretty important part. I guess for me this time. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So I stopped my story from the time I finished my graduate diploma at NEC in Boston. And actually, during that time, the end of that graduate time, some friends and I thought, hey, like, we love playing chamber music. We all had that was our thing. So, what about chamber orchestra? What if we threw together a chamber orchestra concert? So, we got together, rehearsed a ton, I don't know, we put up flyers, I don't remember, and put on a concert. And 13 years later, here they are with, I think, 2 or 3 Grammy nominations. We basically, so it's called A Far Cry, I should say that. So it's a chamber orchestra in Boston called A Far Cry. And it's sort of an unusual model in that it's completely democratic, and that especially at the beginning, every one of the musicians also had an administrative role. We had to learn how to file a 501c3, to incorporate, to become a nonprofit, how to start a board. We had to just do all of the production, and we found a place to rehearse. I mean, we were doing this for free for maybe 2 years, and then we started paying ourselves a little bit, and then more and more. But it was this immense labor of love, which had, I mean, the work that we put into it has really come back and flourished. And it's been, I mean, I toured to Europe a few times with them, got to go to the Grammys in 2015. We lost to Hilary Hahn. So that happened then. So I was living in Boston playing with A Far Cry, and I was starting to gig a little bit in New York. Through some of these summer festivals, I met some people in New York and we started a chamber group. So I was doing a lot of commuting on the Amtrak, but we started a group called Icarus. And so I was going to New York to play chamber music, and then I started gigging a little bit in New York City. And I didn't love living in Boston. I should say that. I think coming from California, it didn't have the same kind of warmth that I was used to. I mean, emotional warmth, I guess. But there's something about New York that I was really drawn to, just how there were so many kinds of people, and I mean, everybody was just themselves completely. And I auditioned for this program, which at that time was called the Academy, this is the whole title, a program of Carnegie Hall, the Juilliard School, and the Weill Music Institute in partnership with the New York City Department of Education. Is that right? We had to practice saying that because we were only allowed to say that. Anyway, so
I never said that.
So this was a fellowship program for it's a postgraduate fellowship program at Carnegie Hall for 20 fellows. Basically a chamber orchestra, and we performed chamber music at Carnegie Hall and around the city, and we were also paired with a New York City public school. So I was teaching, or I should say partner teaching, at a school on Staten Island, and a couple of times a month, and then we also had professional development, learning about starting groups, learning about putting on concerts in unconventional places, learning about, most importantly, which Richard referred to earlier, bringing music into your community, to a place where people might not otherwise have access to music, or classical music specifically. And also learning, and this is really important, how to take a piece of music and find what about that piece of music is interesting or engaging, and find a way to share that with an audience in a engaging, participatory kind of way. So I do a lot of that still now. And the first day, our orientation of the academy,
You saw me.
I saw this person sitting there, and I thought, oh no, he's going to be trouble. And here we are. So, yeah, so I continued gigging, oops, there we go again, gigging in New York City and playing a lot of chamber music. And yeah, that's where I'll stop.
Let's play.
Okay.
Unless Conrad, you want to add
unless you want to
anything.
do questions.
Now, why don't you guys play a little more, and then
Okay.
we'll come back to some questions.
Could I
So
introduce?
Yeah, of course.
I want to introduce this one because this is a piece that I've heard Richard play probably 3,000 times. And I didn't know, we're smiling at our dog over there. I didn't know that it could be a duet and that I could once have the chance to play it myself. So it's been really nice.
So I think more importantly than that, these are vocalises, which are, a vocalise is an exercise written for singers, but they don't have any words. So it's essentially a musical phrase written for a singer to practice phrasing. These were originally written by an Italian composer called Marco Bordoni. And then there's a young man in the early 20th century called Johannes Rochu. I mixed that up. Johannes Rochu was a French trombone player. He studied at the Paris Conservatory, but he was brought over to be principal trombone of the Boston Symphony, and he stayed there for about 50 years. And he transcribed the vocalises of Marco Bordoni for the trombone, and they are now one of the staples in terms of just learning how to play lyrically on this sort of, rather at first sight cumbersome instrument. So, and then a friend of mine called Tom Irvin actually wrote some counterpoints to them, which allows us to play them as a duet, fulfilling one of Margaret's lifelong dreams.
There's singers here, so it's like extra
Correct.
pressure. They know
Right.
about these vocalises. You.
All right.
Do you care if we throw a couple questions in?
No, please.
Let's see. If I go through the list here, one is, when did you know you wanted to pursue a career in music?
Well, I think I always did, actually, from a pretty young age. I just, I liked the excitement of it, and I liked the challenge of it. I liked the fact that you got to travel, and from a fairly young age, I think you start to meet people who are professionals, who are teaching as well, and you see the kind of lives that they've had and the paths that they've had. And if there's one thing I'd say from today is, or to remember from today or tonight, is that we've had very different paths, but had great experiences, and there's no one correct path. There's no one perfect school. There's no one perfect teacher. There's no one perfect career. There's only what creativity that you throw into it and what you get out of it. And I think that it's just exciting to think that there's always that possibility. Now, that's not to say there haven't been tough times, and there always is in every profession or every walk of life. But that's what I always knew, really, from a pretty young age. I was thrown in by my teacher when I was really young. I mean, I was like 8 or 9 when I started, and I for some reason I adapted to it pretty quickly. And he threw me in bands, and I mean, like, jazz bands and brass bands and wind bands. He threw me in there with like 15, 16, 17, 18 year olds. And so I was like hanging out with all these older kids who I thought were really cool. So
Yeah, it's definitely not linear. I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
really important. And I've been thinking recently that, like, if there's a moment where you're thinking I have to choose between X or Y, it's not. Well, there might be some major things that you have to make big decisions about, but you don't need to you don't need to like quell one passion in order to study music, because I think invariably that passion or that skill will come in handy, and that sort of relates to music now, or being an artist now, is that there are different ways to create a career that have maybe a couple of different parts. I have a couple of friends that are incredible violinists, and they both kind of got into yoga in a very serious way, and now they have an app, they have these workshops, like, but they're also still playing solos with orchestras around the world. So there's ways to kind of incorporate your other passions into your career, and it's I think that's becoming more and more valuable when you're looking for a job too, I think.
yeah, I mean, we're living in a world now where we hear about the gig economy and all that stuff, and so if you're a musician that is freelancing, as we call it, or, like, I think a more recent term is a portfolio career, where maybe you teach some, you perform some orchestras, you play some chamber music, and then you do some community work, some recording work. That kind of portfolio career. It doesn't have to be what's come before, and I'd like to share this. We both have a good friend in New York. She's a fabulous horn player, was playing in New York, and now is actually a member of the Seattle Symphony. But her great passion was playing 80s pop tunes in horn quartets, right? So she'd arrange 80s pop tunes for 4 horn players, right? And it was really quirky, right? So they'd go out, and this is really pretty early on in YouTube's kind of genesis. And when the stuff that we do on laptops wasn't quite as easy, but they make these really terrible YouTube videos of them around New York playing 80s pop tunes on the French horns. And anytime I would be on a concert, I remember doing a concert with Tan Dunn. Is he the famous? He wrote the music to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and other things. He won the Oscar for that. So I was doing a concert with him, and we're rehearsing. And Danielle runs up to me in the intermission, was like, "Can you conduct my horn quartet playing this Aha tune?" You know, so it's like she'd throw these things on YouTube and whatever. It sounds kooky, right? But actually, in the end, it became sort of popular to the point where horn manufacturers were contacting them and saying, "Can we make a French horn case?" The name of the group, by the way, is Genghis Barbie. So can we make a horn case for Genghis Barbie? Can we make French horn bells for you? So, okay, she plays in the Seattle Symphony, which is a 6-figure salary, playing great music with great conductors. But she also has this side income stream from what was her sort of kooky passion. So, you know, being creative and throwing stuff out there, I think is a big, I can't remember what the question was, but it's a big part of being a musician. It's just, you know, throwing stuff out there that you enjoy doing and seeing what sticks. You never know what's going to stick.
Yeah.
That's how we know it's a good conversation if we can't remember what the questions are, right? Right. Why don't we let you guys move through your agenda a little bit and or your program there, and
Let's not do the Telemon.
Oh, you don't want to do the time? Okay.
No, we should have, yeah.
All right. So I have to talk.
I'm gonna play Nippy.
You want me to play and then talk? Okay. I'm going to play a solo. Okay, I've got to turn my mic down a little bit. Okay, so this was written by Leonard Bernstein, and this is about a dog called Mippy. It's a short solo piece for unaccompanied trombone. The dog belonged to his brother Bertie Bernstein, and I think the dog had a big personality. So I hope you enjoy it.
You should have seen how our dog reacted to that. He's been sleeping the whole time, and then the first loud hit, he went like this. Turn it back up, right?
I did
Oh,
already.
you did. Okay.
yeah. So we got a couple options here. One is we can go back into the program you guys have put together. I've got a lot of questions over here,
Okay.
though.
Yeah.
What do you think about just going for more questions? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What would you recommend?
To prepare to go to become a professional.
Yeah,
musician?
any high school musician. What advice would you
Yeah.
give?
So I think if you are, I think you, again, this comes back to like the information and the area you're in. I mean, you have to get with a good teacher that's going to instill good basic foundation of technique into you.
Yeah.
Because we talk a lot about legacy families, we call them. So there's you know, there's legacy families, so maybe, you know,
I think for some people like whose maybe parents are professional musicians, or even like I feel like I had an advantage just because my mom kind of understood the scene, and in terms of like she knew that I needed to have lessons, like the very basics, and then she knew how to find a really good teacher in my hometown, and then I had to do the next step of finding the right festivals to attend. I just kept just absorbing and listening and researching as much as possible. And I was just thinking like, you know, like if you want to reach out to us, I mean, this is like we're establishing a connection right now. You could ask us, could you put me in touch with a professional musician with whom I could have a lesson?
An oboe lesson, and I live in Kansas.
Right, or even just like talk to about their specific career. I mean, I think you can't be shy about that. Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, I think that's the first key is getting that first connection with someone that's going to instill good fundamentals, and then you go from there.
Yeah.
And then you look at what's in the state level and then the national level.
Yeah.
Cool. And I think you brought up something that seems really important right now with where we are in our history and the way distance music is happening right now. It's really possible to take that lesson with somebody in New York right now.
Yeah, actually, there's a violist in Brazil who has reached out to other colleagues. She's American, but she said, "You get in touch with me, and I'm going to put you in touch with one of these like 1,000 students who doesn't have access to it otherwise. Would you mind giving them a free lesson?" Like, I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about giving up? And how did you overcome the challenge?
Yeah. I mean,
but not because of I've only ever thought about it because there's been times when I've been frustrated with my career and I've not been where I wanted to be. And I think that's when you have to take a good hard look at yourself and say, well, have I put in the correct work, or am I just in the wrong place, or do I need to create another opportunity for myself?
That's true. Sometimes it's your environment that it's like kind of creating that vibe for you. So if you switch environments, like you might have a different perspective. I think for me it was, if I ever got to that point, I would always ask the question like, well, could I live without it? Like, what would that look like? And it was always no. Like, I don't think I could live without it in whatever capacity it takes. And right now, if I'm very honest, like with a young child, I can't dedicate the same amount of time as I did before. I know that will get back to normal eventually, or not normal, I should say, a different kind of time and focus. But it, as again, the same thing, a theme that it's not linear. There are times when you'll be frustrated, and there are times when you'll flourish, and like that, I think that feeling is so worth it, worth the struggle.
There's two more questions I want to ask, and then we'll let you guys play some more. One of them actually both of them you've kind of walked us into a little bit. One is, how flexible is your schedule with all the traveling and performing? Do you feel as if you get a good amount of time for relaxation, for family?
So there was definitely a point when we were first in New York, before we had our son and before we had our dog, when we were traveling a lot, and we would literally pass each other in airports. And that was frustrating, and we did make a conscious decision to take more New York-based work. It's interesting, if you're in a city like, I think, not only New York or LA, you get called to go and do stuff around all over the world. I mean, I remember like flying back from the Middle East after playing the Music Man in Muscat, Oman, and then 3 days later flying to Tokyo and then on to Hong Kong. And I remember looking at that world map on the plane, when you're flying, and I just remember thinking, I'm flying past where I've got to be in like 37 hours or something. It got a bit ridiculous. And for me, actually my first gig out of school, so I went to the Royal Academy of Music and I got a job in Germany. And it was an orchestra that, although it was based in Munich, we traveled all the time. There was a sort of impresario conductor who was quite famous. He had a TV show called Achtung Classics, in Germany, and we would travel all over the place. Went to St. Petersburg and Russia and Italy, and all over Germany. And you know, that sounds great at first, but boy, after a while, just living out of a suitcase gets really old, really fast. And so we made the choice to, you know, just to have a dog in New York City was a big decision.
And it came with knowing that we had between us,
Right.
like full-time, not full-time, but like consistent. We had consistent work with my Broadway show.
Okay,
Like that was
Margaret
like,
got the show, yeah.
okay, now we have something. I won't be leaving every two. I loved touring, if I'm totally honest. Like I didn't love the exhaustion, but I'm so glad that I took basically my 20s. And
you hate it now.
I don't hate it now, but it's harder now. It's harder now.
It's hard to control your diet. It's hard to control, you know, like what you eat when you're going through airports in different cities and with your huge group. It's just very.
Yeah, you're
it's
not
a 20s thing.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a 20s.
So I think just do it. The balance will come when you need it.
But to give some context, what had happened in the 2 years. So we left New York for 2 years because I was playing with the Cincinnati Symphony in Ohio. So I was there for 2 years, and we moved back to New York. But while we'd been in Cincinnati, you'd be flying to the East Coast, and you'd been going to this orchestra and that. You'd been like flying around, and I was set in one place. And before that, I'd been flying. We'd both been flying around. And so when we moved back to New York, it was like, okay, I got offered a job the same day that you did. I got offered a teaching job at Ball State University the same day Margaret got offered a Broadway show in New York. So we just said, okay, we're going to live in New York, and we're going to have a dog, and we're going to put some roots down, right? Yeah. So how do we find time?
Well, we have it now.
Yeah, we have it with COVID.
Yeah, right.
You have
right,
to. You have to actually, and I think this is a key point about young musicians, or about musicians and what they learn really early when you're young, is time management.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, you've all project managed already. All of you young musicians there watching this, because from when you started playing, you've looked at an etude and gone, okay, that part's fine. I need to do a little bit of work there, but there's the part I need to focus on. You've already done that. That's what project managing is. Mm-hmm. You've already developed skills that people in mid-level management have to go on courses to do, right? You've already done it through music. You've already learned interpersonal skills once you've played in chamber music or played in an orchestra. You're learning skills that will lead you into other walks of life if you need to already. Yeah. And I think time management is key. And then again, that goes with having a good teacher that gives you good information, because you need to practice smart. If you say, oh, I'm awesome, I just put 5 hours, I did 5 hours today, but you were just playing 5 hours of just goofing off and you weren't really focused, that's a waste of time. It's much better to do 30 minutes of really focused stuff on practice on the stuff that you need to do. Mm-hmm. That's going to be far more beneficial in the long run. And I think when you're young, you just think if you crank in enough hours, you know, there's that whole Gladwell thing about 10,000 hours, which is kind of a little bit.
It doesn't.
It's a great way to sell a book, but I don't know how true it actually is. But I'm a cynic.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm hearing this all over your stories. What impact has geography made in your musical careers?
Huge.
Oh yeah. I mean, we both played on at least 4 continents. Yeah. And that I feel, I don't know, I'm so grateful for that. I'm thinking now, like, even if our son doesn't go into music, like, how can we give him that kind of experience? Yeah. Because, yeah. But then other times, like, some meaningful things might happen in our backyard, or, yeah.
Right. I do want to share something which it's sort of related, but it's about where do you find music and what it can do for you, or how you can experience it and share it with people. So I was in an orchestra called the New World Symphony in Miami, Florida, and the New World Symphony is a sort of postgraduate 3-year fellowship for aspiring young musicians. And it's a great situation if you guys look it up, and you know, maybe at the end of your undergraduate degree, because you're working with incredible conductors and you're working with great soloists week in, week out. And then coaches come from, you know, major symphony orchestras around the country. So if that's what your life is focused on, it's a great place to be. So I had a great time there. I remember just before I left, you know, there was problems with my visa, like things weren't going great. But I sat on the stage in Carnegie Hall and played, me and the other guys in the trombone section, we sit there in Beethoven 5 for the first 3 movements, don't do anything. So you're sitting there for about 40 minutes. But then we just came in at the end and we hit the C major chord and it rang so beautifully in tune. It was so well balanced. And, you know, even Michael Tilson Thomas, who was conducting, I looked up and you could see it made a difference. It changed the color of the orchestra, which is essentially all a trombone really does in the symphony. And, you know, that was an incredible moment. But the most powerful musical moment for me, I think, that's guided me even more than that, was we went to a center for adults with mentally handicapped adults in Miami. And one of the things we did in the New World Symphony was sort of start to go out into the community and do concerts at old folks' homes and that sort of thing. And so one day I was invited to go and play. And I remember going to this center for adults. You know, there were some people had Down syndrome, etc. And I took my instrument out of my case and I just blew a few notes just to, you know, warm my instrument up. And everyone burst into applause. Everyone was just enraptured by me playing some stupid 3-note thing. And then I started to play music and share music with these folks that wouldn't have the opportunity to have that experience in a traditional concert hall or a traditional venue. And the feedback and the sense of joy that these folks had just because you were there to play music for them was incredibly powerful. And that in many ways guided me into, okay, so music isn't just about sitting on stage in these, you know, in this tailcoat and white tie looking like something out of Downton Abbey, right? Music is actually about communication and really being in your community and what difference can you make. And that was a really key point in my life. So it doesn't matter if you're in New York City or in a small town somewhere, you know, in a Midwest state. There will be somewhere in your community where you can go and make a difference. You know, you as a high school student could go to an old folks home. You as a high school student could go to a hospital or a soup kitchen or, you know.
Maybe you already have when you like, yeah.
This is, I think, where the artist starts to feed society and the feedback you get is even more enriching. And we have you know, Margaret talked about developing a far cry, the chamber orchestra, from not getting paid to 2 years to now being very, very successful. And I think that a phrase that I like to say a lot is money follows vision. Just like it does with Danielle playing, you know, 80s horn quartets, money follows vision. And if you are committed to using your art for good, then eventually you're going to find people that see the good in that and are going to want to back you and support you. And that's how, you know, things start. And a lot of my career has been involved in bringing music to places that otherwise wouldn't have that opportunity, either in schools. More recently, in New York, I was on the board of an organization that brought music into prisons, brings it into prisons around the country, and has conservatories with incarcerated people, incarcerated communities. Our recidivism rate is 0, so everybody that graduates or gets released from prison who's in our program, nobody reoffends. We have one student who's going to Columbia University in New York now that he's out, and the credit is that music program in those prisons. So there's a lot that you can do outside of performing, you know, on the big stage. There's actually more enriching things you can do if you're open to it.
Recidivism rate of 0. I've done some work in that community, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at what it normally is, that's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I can't wait to talk to you about that when you get here. So I know you have other music you were ready to play. If you want to play it, we've got more questions. I'm going to let you guys call your shot from here on out.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, I know I feel like there's so many questions that we will really want to answer. Obviously, we're enjoying it. So I would be happy to, you know, if we gave you our email addresses, or I think you have our websites there. And so if anybody wants to follow up with us, like, you know, personally, and we're very happy to be in touch. But yeah, we're gonna play.
Let's play this. Oh, let's do
Yeah.
questions, and then we'll play this one as the last number.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So actually, I'm as a composer myself, I have to ask this question. One of our comp students put it in, and I heard you say there's not a lot of music for your duo, right? And so I was like, well, do you commission? You know, and one of our composers said, do you work with live composers, and have you done that before? And what is that like? What might be frustrating? What's enjoyable about it?
Well, we haven't done it, the two of us, but we've certainly done
We've
it.
got one thing out there, but go on.
Well, it's not written for us, so.
No, that's
But we've both worked with a lot of contemporary composers in New York, all over. Oh man, it's great. Actually, that's a wonderful thing to do, is be able to work on a piece together, and especially, you know, if you're willing to give the composer feedback about, you know, I think this works well on my instrument. But I actually think, like, there have been times when I was asked to play this piece in New York over 10 years ago. And I remember getting the music, and it was, you know, I had to print it out at that time, and it was like 15 pages long, no possible way of turning the pages. It was a solo viola piece. And I couldn't understand even how he wrote this music. Like, I didn't understand his notation at all. And I meet him, and I was very frustrated trying to figure this out. And I meet him the day before the concert. This was going to be a concert put on by the Brooklyn Philharmonic at a place called, it's that place in Dumbo.
Brick?
No, the one, Galapagos. It was this crazy venue.
Just before the trapeze artists came out?
Basically. So I meet him, and first of all, I speak Spanish not well, but he only spoke Spanish. He was coming from Mexico City. And so we're sitting down, and he's just this, I don't know, his mind is obviously spinning. And I realize, he tells me, no, you're not supposed to be holding the viola like this. You're supposed to be holding the viola like this. And this is the day before the concert, and this insane piece, and I just remember being like, hey, I just have to go for this. But my point is that, like, that moment pushed me in a way for extended technique, that, like, actually helped me grow as a violist. Kind of gave me it opened the palette of sounds. Yeah, we love working with composers. Yeah.
I actually arranged, I just want to put this out because I'm, like, really proud of this. So
oh yeah.
I arranged when we first got here for, you know, under the COVID lockdown. So I was just doing anything, going crazy. So I arranged for 4 trombones and 2 violas a song from Margaret's show called Defying Gravity, which is one of the big hits from Wicked, right? So I arranged it just for fun, thinking 4 trombones and viola. Okay, this is kind of
And I was
stupid.
like, I don't want to do this.
She was just
I play that piece so much. I'm so ticked.
So we recorded it literally with an iPhone mic.
With the acapella app.
No, it wasn't.
Right?
Was it acapella?
I think the first one was acapella.
Was it
Yeah.
acapella?
Yeah.
So and whatever. So it's the most, like, basic non-tech lo-fi thrown together thing you've ever seen, and then. So I just put it on Instagram for a laugh, and then
I sent it to my orchestra colleagues at Wicked because we were missing each other, and I thought, hey, like, this is nice, like, and then
New York Wicked picked it up in New York and started posting it online everywhere.
Yeah, I think like our conductor shared it with the PR person at Wicked.
So it had 150,000 views across all the platforms, and it was the most low-tech. Low budge.
We did it in, like, an afternoon.
Yeah,
kind
and
of
she
thing.
was complaining the whole time while we were doing it.
We need to practice.
So it was, So be careful what you put out there.
Yeah. It was a great arrangement, though. It's really good. You can find it on Richard's Instagram.
It's all over the internet at this point. I just found it and threw it in the chat.
Good
Yeah. Why don't you guys play whatever you want to play, and we'll call it an evening, huh?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, please be in touch. We would love to.
Did you hear that, students? Professionals are not scary. They actually really like sharing.
Yeah.
So I'm changing weapons now. I'm playing a bass trombone.
And I forgot the gun mufflers, but we'll be fine.
Do you need to roll gain back on that bass trombone?
Oh, good.
No, I think it was okay, right?
I don't know. I know we've changed it a couple times since we got started, so I don't remember now.
I think it was
Oh,
fine.
okay.
The guy said it was fine when we sounded
Yeah, yeah.
it.
Yeah.
We're just doing this one, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So this is called the peanut butterfly.
Right.
Now we have repertoire for our duo thanks to this class. This has been so fun to prepare for.
Nice.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Let's all unmute, even though it won't actually work, and give them a round of applause.
We have a special guest here.
Yeah, there it is. There he is.
Oh
That's
my
a good
God.
dog right there. That's a good dog.
Looks like mine.
full.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I want to thank you two again for doing this. I think this is meaningful, absolutely meaningful. When I go back to the age where most of our camp attendees are, this is what I wanted. I wanted to hear music, but I wanted to hear you tell me how you did this, you know? And so I really think this is a meaningful thing, and I just want to thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for
This has
having
been
us.
great.
Yeah.